Hello, my brothers and sisters in gaming. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming. Thank you for tuning in for another video, another episode of QuickBird News. I really do appreciate it. So, according to the thumbnail, we got to talk about Subnautica and what's going on over at Krafton Studios. This sounds like a real mess, and we'll get into the details. On top of that, we got some stories about Nintendo, including them co-opting the FBI to do their dirty work for them. We got another live service game shutting down, some reactions to the wipe and the reset of Escape from Tarkov. All the stories have a timestamp down below, so you can jump down in the description box and skip to a story if you see something that interests you. All right, now that I've got the preliminaries out of the way, let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with this article from IGN, which was published on Thursday, 10 July. Subnautica 2 publisher Krafton blames lead for delay in statement, saying they, quote, abandoned responsibilities. Now, the upshot of this is last week that Krafton, who had acquired Unknown Worlds, the developer of the original Subnautica game, and they basically removed the three lead executives, the lead designers from the studio, the people that had founded Unknown Worlds back in the day, and removed them from working on Subnautica 2. And said that, and if we scroll down the article, it says, accusing the studio's leaders of having abandoned responsibilities on the game, alleging they focused on personal projects rather than filling their contracted roles, and suggesting the game's delay is their fault. The game was supposed to be released, at least for early access, this fall, but now has been pushed off to 2026, and Krafton is blaming these three developers. Okay, then a published statement sent to the press, which we've reprinted below. Krafton claims it made multiple requests to Unknown World founders Charlie Cleveland and Max Reguire to resume their responsibilities as game director, but claim they both declined, and they go into it. And here is kind of the salient point, and this is what a lot of people are sticking on. Krafton also makes reference to a reported $250 million that was promised to the development team, which it would have paid out a few months from now if it hit revenue targets. Per Krafton, 90% of this bonus was intended to go towards the three executives. Now, here is the entire statement. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I will link it below. I will link this article below so you can read the statement if you would like. But essentially, Krafton says they did not follow through, and we are removing them. Now, they replaced this. They replaced these three. They replaced the CEO. I don't remember where. I don't remember the individual. Oh, right here. Former Striking Distance CEO Steve Papoutsis. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Now, for anybody who doesn't remember, Striking Distance was the game, or the dev company that made the game, the Callisto Protocol, which turned out to be a buggy mess and pretty much died on the vine. Okay, so Subnautica's team was replaced with the guy who oversaw that. Probably not a good omen, but we'll see. This replacement came as a shock to Cleveland, who claimed in a Reddit post shortly after his removal that Subnautica 2 was ready for early release. The decision was in Krafton's hands. Basically, these three individuals said, the game is ready to go, why can't we release it? And Krafton is the one pushing it back to 2026. And Krafton is saying, because they have abandoned their duties, that's why it's having to be pushed back. This was followed by a Bloomberg report that alleged this decision was made just before this bonus was scheduled to be paid out to the team, with staff expecting bonuses ranging from hundreds of thousands of dollars to seven figures. They were now concerned they would not see. In short, what's kind of being alleged here is that Krafton pretty much deliberately torpedoed the release of this game on time to avoid having to pay this $250 million bonus to these three execs and to the dev team at Unknown Worlds. That's what's being inferred here. Now, that article was on Thursday. Now, over on Friday is this article from Eurogamer. Subnautica 2 drama escalates. Ousted developers launch legal action as Krafton accused them of abandoning project. This article kind of summarizes all the things that I just talked about. And it talked about how they, they were being removed, even though they said the game was ready, blah, 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 blah. We get down here, but now the gloves are well and truly off, with Cleveland posting to Krafton's statement with an announcement of legal action. In a post to the Subnautica community, he described the ongoing saga as explosive and surreal time for the team and community, reiterating, we know in our souls that this game is ready for early access. Now, obviously, the announcement of this lawsuit just happened, so it's going to play out over the next weeks and months unless some kind of settlement is reached. But, if you ask me, and nobody did, but it's my video, so I'm going to say, if you ask me, I don't want to go out there and say that Krafton deliberately did this to avoid paying $250 million, but it sure does look sketchy. And the fact that these three individuals are launching a lawsuit tells me that they have think that they have a reasonable chance of succeeding in it. So maybe there is something there. If Subnautica 2 really was truly ready to be shown to the public this fall and Krafton delayed it, I think they're going to have a weak leg. They're going to have a weak leg to stand on when it comes to this lawsuit. If these guys were smart and they kept copies of the game in its playable state, then it's just going to have to play out in court, and we're going to see. We're going to see what happens. But this has turned into a complete mess. And was it mentioned in this article? I think I have to go back to the other article. Yes. They say, in response to the removal of the three members of leadership and concerns about the denial of promises bonuses, fans have begun organizing boycotts of the game on social media. And this is not the kind of negative press you want prior to your game release. You've got a whole lot of people out here, and these things tend to take on a life of their own. You got a lot of people out here that are saying not to buy the game, and please don't buy the game. And in fact, posts on the Subnautica's on Reddit's Subnautica forums have been saying do not buy this game. I've seen some other YouTubers covering this, and I think this is going to end up with Krafton having a whole lot of egg on their face, even if they don't pay out the bonus. But to be determined. More news will come. Next up, I have two articles from Game Rant that are discussing the state of Nintendo, as it were. The first of these was published on Friday, 11th of July. One of the biggest Switch piracy websites has been seized by the FBI. The Nintendo piracy website NSWTU has been taken offline following a mid-July seizure by the FBI. It has taken out one of the largest hosts of illegal Switch ROMs on the internet, which has been operational for 5 years. So, basically, they have taken this offline, and in fact, if you go over to the website, it does indeed say the website has been seized, the domain by the FBI, in pursuant to a seizure warrant, yada yada yada. And basically, this article talks a little bit about how consoles and handhelds get pirated. They said one of the largest was taken off based on social media chatter and cache site history. Was taken offline on Thursday, July 10th. Yammer. The takedown notice reveals that the FBI cooperated with FIAD, a Dutch fiscal information and investigation agency. While the extent of this collaboration is unclear, the mention of FIAD suggests the site's operators may have been based in the Netherlands. And this development follows a series of moves by Nintendo to strengthen its anti-piracy policies. I don't really blame Nintendo for this. I'm not a Nintendo fan by any stretch of the imagination. I find a lot of their business policies abhorrent. However, I do think they have the right to protect themselves from piracy. Do I think this is going to make a lot of difference in the long run? Probably not. This is kind of like the Hydra situation. You take down one ROM site and others will pop up, probably in jurisdictions where the Western law enforcement cannot touch them, say in Russia or other less lawful areas of the third world. So I don't know if this is going to make any difference in the long run, but I don't really fault Nintendo for this. If I have any fault in this particular story, it is with the FBI because realistically, given other things that have happened this week, they have a lot bigger things they need to be focusing on. And that's about all I'm going to say on that, at the risk of getting too political. Now, what I will blame Nintendo for is this article, the second article from Game Rant, which was published on Thursday, 10th of July. Switch 2 players are getting banned after playing used games. Some Nintendo Switch 2 consoles are being banned after inserting used games, and those players are sharing their warning with other early adopters of the new console. Essentially, what is happening is that players who have purchased used games are putting them into their Switch 2, and they are getting bricked. The article kind of suggests that the main culprit are people who copy a game, then sell it back to the store. They sell the copy. When the copy is inserted in the Switch 2 on the network detects two versions of the same game and immediately shuts down the second one. Let's see. Multiple users have reported that buying used games have knocked out their console. In one player's case, everything seemed fine when they initially inserted the Switch 1 cartridge and downloaded an online update. However, they returned the next day to discover their Switch 2 had been banned from using online services. Other users reportedly went through the same thing when buying a used or borrowing a copy of a Switch game from a library. And then they suggest that they seem that there's unlucky cases where the games have been copied. Thankfully, these players have found a solution in talking to Nintendo support. And it sounds like some of these cases, maybe most of these cases are being able to resolve with support. That being said, this is an absolutely monkey brain practiced by Nintendo. I don't know what the hell they're thinking doing this. I get that they want to combat piracy, but this has the same air as suggesting we don't care if 10 innocent people go to jail as long as we are able to punish 10 guilty people. I just find this incredibly overreaching and overbearing. And given that Nintendo is actually facing a lawsuit in Brazil right now, I don't have an article for it. They're facing a lawsuit in Brazil over rendering consoles useless, the Switch 2 useless. I think they're going to be in for some harder times ahead. There's starting to be some pushback to their draconian policies, as well there should be. This is why I don't support Nintendo. If people want to play them, that's fine. But I'm also not that sympathetic when things go wrong, because this stuff is the norm with the company. You take your chances, and there's nothing more to say about it. Coming to us from Eurogamer is this article published on Wednesday, July 9th. Yet another live service game announces shutdown just 3 months after early access launch. Steel Hunters to close in October. Live service mech shooter Steel Hunters will shut down in October, announced just 3 months after it entered early access. The free-to-play futuristic shooter was developed and published by Wargaming, known for its Worlds of Tanks series, but after mixed reviews and an all-time concurrent peak of just 4,500 players, it's now sunsetting. And then to me, it goes into a little more detail about it. Basically said it couldn't compete with Mecha Break, which is which is hitting about 20 or 30 times its player count. I actually had never heard of this game. I'm not big on live service games to begin with, and I'm not really. I've never played a mech type game, so this wasn't one that was on my radar. To me, the interesting point here is they are actually shutting down a live service game before it even really got started. I mean, at least Concord, when it released, it actually released the full release. They sold copies, and it was a done deal. This one is still in early access, and they're shutting it down now. And they say down here, they say that the servers were made and running for another 3 months until around 8 October. And they're unlocking all the features, all the playable hunters and everything. And a farewell tournament is also planned. I think we're just looking at another live service game that failed to find a footing. It is so hard, in my opinion, because I think that is a finite player base for these types of games. And right now, you've got a set amount of people who are committed to Call of Duty, a set amount that are committed to Fortnite. Your extraction shooter people seem to be committed to Escape from Tarkov. It's hard to break into the market with something new or different. And I would say statistically, what is the statistic? I'm probably going to misquote this. That 4 out of 5 restaurants fail within 5 years of opening. I think that for live service games like this, excuse me, your odds of failing are going to be about the same. Just because they don't do enough to differentiate themselves from their competition, their entrenched competition. So another live service game fails, and Sony says they're still committed to them. Other companies are still developing live service games. I guess we'll see what happens, but they're more confident in their success than I am in them. Since I just mentioned Escape from Tarkov, we'll come over to this Dual Shockers article published on Thursday, 10 July. Escape from Tarkov hardcore wipe is off to a rough start. Battlestate Games Escape from Tarkov, I'm just going to call it Tarkov from here on out, has been riding the waves of its hardcore reputation since early access in The game's been in early access for 8 years, good grief. But the father of all modern extraction shooters has gone the extra mile with the latest patch. Dubbed the hardcore wipe, the season of Escape from Tarkov is marked by an aggressive difficulty spike thanks to restrictions to traders, spawn points, and more. And they're part of a broader plan to test some of the mechanics. and this has been enough time for the community to beg for easing some of the changes to make the game playable. Now, they get into some of the mechanics, which, because I don't play Tarkov or extraction shooters, I don't understand all this, but just reading from a normie, from a normie perspective from outside the community, it just sounds like they made the game a lot harder. And this individual says the transits are broken, and so on and so forth, compounded by a lack of quests. I don't know what, there won't be quests for some period of time, and then they said quests will return like today. So maybe during the update they had temporarily disabled them. I'm not sure I understand, but it just sounds like it's been rough for this community. And like I said, this has kind of been the signature extraction shooter out there. And then there's this article from over, which makes this a little more interesting, from over at IGN, which was published on Friday the 11th of July. Stirs up emotive responses from fans and devs alike. And this is where it gets kind of interesting to me, because I'm always interested when I see these types of responses from developers. I never understand why developers attack their fans or their customer bases. Now, this wasn't directly an attack, but it was interesting. Okay, let's see. They got a strong reaction from the head of the studio, Nikita Buyanov. When one player plopped up and Buyanov's mentioned saying you'd restored your game, bro, the head of the studio's response was, "Oh, shut the F up." And though he later on in a different tweet that he was joking, "Don't shut the F up, every opinions matter," fans seemed split on his response and the impact the wipe had on the game. And, people say unless they tweak some stuff fast in 1 to 3 days, I think most players will quit this wipe. They've gone too far and removed. Buyanov disagreed, writing, "I totally disagree with you. Seem like you never play early Tarkov." And this goes through a list of people who are either agreeing or disagreeing over the brokenness or difficulty introduced with this new patch. But that really wasn't my point of bringing this second article up. My point was to go back and look at the response where this individual, the head of the studio, seems to be slightly combative with his players. Now, he knows his player base better than I do, and this may turn out to be nothing. It may just be a lot of smack talk and the players and the developers going back and forth. But it always makes me uneasy to see developers, like I said, being directly confrontational with their players. It always seems like such an unforced error by the people who are trying to get you to buy their product. And I've never understood that. So it's interesting. I wonder how many people are going to, take umbrage with this and decide to wash their hands of the game. It may not be many. Like I said, it may be the people that play this game are already kind of hardcore to begin with because of the nature of it, and they've got thick skins, in which case, they'll run their mouths, but they'll slough it off and they'll log back in. Very possible. And if that's the environment that they want to cultivate around the game, yeah, more power to them. I think that's fine, as long as everybody, that it's involved with that is on board. And like I said, Buyanov may know his players much better than I do. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting and noteworthy to point that out. Next is this article from Video Games Chronicle from Friday 11th of July. Paid custom servers are coming to Sea of Thieves next year. And Rare has announced that paid custom servers are coming to Sea of Thieves. Announced during the game's first community direct, Custom Seas, the game's private paid servers will come to Sea of Thieves in early 2026, according to Rare. This feature will also give players access to exclusive tools such as the cinematic camera used to make trailers for the game. Specific pricing structure or specific pricing information wasn't shared, but Rare did concede the feature is an expensive one to support and will require a monthly fee. The game is also getting a model, and it talks a little bit about their seasons and their updates here. I don't know that there's ever been an MMO that has done this before. I'm sure it's happened, but I always think this is a great kind of idea. Yes, it's going to be for a fee, but Rare is going to allow people to set up their own custom servers with their own rule sets and give them the ability, like they said right there, to make their own cinematic type trailers. To me, this is somewhat analogous to the whole idea of allowing mods on your game, because when you allow the player base of your game, whether it's 100 people or 100,000 people, when you allow them to uncork their creativity and take hold of it, that's when the true love of the game shines and comes out. I haven't played Sea of Thieves, although I know some people that do, and they say they quite enjoy it. So, hopefully they can get involved in this too. I guess we'll have to wait and see what the pricing is going to look like on this. It may be prohibitively expensive, but if it's not, I think it's a great option. And I'll give Rare kudos for this because they're allowing the players to tailor the experience of the game to be what they want. And isn't that kind of what we all want with our games? I, for one, think so. Okay, I have a couple of articles here about Bethesda. Bethesda, historically, is one of my favorite gaming companies and made some of my favorite games, but they have fallen on hard times lately, just in terms of output and quality. So let's go ahead and jump into this. This is from Tweaktown, which was published on Tuesday, July 8th. Report, multiple new Fallout games in development, including Fallout 3 Remaster. A journalist for a credible site says there are multiple new Fallout games in development right now. And we can scroll down, blah, 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 blah. Bethesda parent ZeniMax was hit by the Xbox cuts, which I detailed last week, leading to various layoffs, the important cancellation of an MMO project. They are currently riding the strong current of Oblivion Remaster along Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 6. If they did cancel projects, they might be reshuffling people. So, that might be the silver lining in that. They continue to work on Elder Scrolls 6, and they've said in the past that Elder Scrolls 6 will come first, and then the next numbered Fallout, which will be Fallout 5. So one of the new games isn't the mainline Fallout 5, which is very disappointing to me, because I've said Fallout is my single favorite games franchise in video gaming. So I would love to see a new game. But anyway, this news comes by way of Video Game Chronicle journalist Jordan Midler, who joined a recent Friends Per Second podcast. There are multiple Fallout projects in development, including, as far as I'm aware, the one you've all been wanting, but it's not far enough to make an announcement that people will be playing it anytime soon. Fallout 5 should have been day one, and they didn't bother. Much like Fallout, another franchise that is huge that they're doing nothing with at the moment, essentially Fallout 76, but the fact that Fallout 5 was immediately rushed into production when all that happened is just crazy. They have too many irons in the fire, and it's kind of coming home to roost. Kind of what I alluded to a moment ago with some of their projects canceled, including a big MMO. Maybe they will reshuffle personnel. He said Fallout is the big one. I can't believe they didn't immediately start work on Fallout 5. Okay, yada, yada, yada. Bethesda has yet to confirm or announce Fallout 3 Remastered, but the game was listed in the leaked documents from the FTC versus Microsoft trial of 2023. Okay, so according to this individual, there are multiple Fallout projects in the works. I don't know where he gets his information from, so I'm going to kind of take it with a grain of salt. I would love for that to be true. I would love a Fallout 3 remastered version just because trying to get Fallout 3 to run on modern operating systems can be somewhat of a nightmare. I've had a lot of trouble with it myself. So I would love to see one that just has the code tweaked enough to allow it to run on, say, Windows 11 without trouble. That would be nice. Given what happened with the Oblivion remake, we will still be subject to all the crashes and everything else the original Fallout 3 had. I can probably live with that, but I can't live with the fact that it conflicts with the OS so much. So I would love to see that, just as a Fallout fan. He says there's multiple projects in the works, but as usual, it's nothing but a tease, man. It is nothing but a tease. Now, since I mentioned Bethesda a moment ago, and I was talking about falling on hard times, I was really primarily thinking about Starfield. And in this article published on Insider Gaming on Friday, July 11th, Starfield's missing expansion and Bethesda's silence is stirring unease. When Starfield was released in 2023, it came with the promise of a lengthy content pipeline that would yield at least one major expansion every year. Nearly 2 years later, and following the lukewarm reception of Shattered Space, fans are still waiting for Bethesda to deliver the game's second expansion, and by the day, more are giving up hope. And this goes in here and talks about a little bit about how the Starfield came out, and then Shattered Space came out a year later, and basically to, kind of indifference. In March, the team wrote on socials, "We know you're eager for an update, and we appreciate your passion, blah, 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 blah." They don't really tell you anything there. They said, the article says, but the most obvious window, the Xbox Games Showcase, came in without a peep. That would have been, being that Bethesda, ZeniMax is under Microsoft, that would have been the ideal time to announce a DLC for a game you're trying to keep alive that you have a 10-year development tail on. But they didn't. And then the article says it all boils down to accountability. It was a clear promise they'd have an expansion. They've only had the one. Bethesda's guarantee of long-term support is feeling increasingly hollow, especially when you look at the post-launch efforts of an adjacent project like Fallout 76, the MMORPG that has been kept plugged with content for 7 years. and Fallout 76 has achieved somewhat of a revival after its kind of clumsy launch. They say if Starborn echoes the performance of Shattered Space and fails to deliver, or worse, never materializes, Starfield may be chalked up as a failure. Fans are hoping and expecting some kind of reveal at an announcement at Gamescom 2025. In a few weeks, we know Bethesda will be there, but nobody knows in what capacity. Excuse me. And really, this to me is where, like I said, Bethesda has fallen on hard times. It's amazing to me that they put this much effort and development into a game like Starfield, and yet have kind of left it to wither and die. Fallout, the last games in the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout franchises, not counting Fallout 76, single player games, so the ones that are kind of equivalent to Starfield, are Skyrim and Fallout 4. Both of those games still have 5-figure player totals, 10 to 20 or 25,000 players daily on Steam, 10 and 15 years after their launches. Not only that, the modding community around those games is absolutely insane. I mean, it's outside of nothing. I mean, it's nothing I've seen, bigger than anything I've seen other than maybe Minecraft, and the sheer number of mods that people have built for this game, the passion of the fans, kind of what I alluded to a minute ago on the Sea of Thieves thing, because Bethesda gave people the tools and it allowed people to unlock their creativity, and that kind of engagement has kept those games relevant. Nobody's modding Starfield. Nobody cares. They skip over to the Steam database numbers and just confirm we're on the Starfield page. Yeah, 3,000 to 5,000 players. Put up a 6-month chart, and they pretty much kind of vacillate between 3,000 and 7,000 players, and that's it for a game that peaked at 330,000. And bear in mind, compared to Fallout 4 and Skyrim, this game is not even 2 years old yet as of the making of this video, and they have failed to keep interest. And that's sad. And, if you go to the Steam page and look, their overall reviews, the 100,000 reviews, 58% positive. They're mixed, ratings. For the last 30 days, 58% positive. So consistently, the game has been met with a very mixed response, and not many people are even playing anymore. The article goes on, you go on, and somewhere in the article it said that when they wrote the article, they checked, only 50 people were watching on Twitch. It's just not relevant anymore, and the longer they let it sit there, the less relevant it's going to be. So, Bethesda, they did good releasing the Oblivion remaster. I think that bought them a lot of goodwill. If they do a Fallout 3 remaster and it's at least as good a quality as the Oblivion one, that will help them. But they are running out of things that they can remaster and throw out there. They're going to have to do something soon. I mean, if Elder Scrolls 6 doesn't stick the landing, this company could be among the next one that Microsoft says. And I would hate to see that happen. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed. Okay, I am going to end this video with this extra wide double handful helping full of nope. This article from PC Games In, this was from Thursday, July 10th. New horror game Shark Dentist is exactly what it says it is, and it's terrifying.
Oh, hell no!
Basically what this is exactly what it says on the tin. You are a dentist in some claustrophobic underground basement, as they say here, full of rusty chains and strange breathing. As if that wasn't, and you perform agonizingly precise dental procedures on half-awake sharks who somehow seem to be surviving for sustained periods out of the water. You'll have to simultaneously manage pain levels, administer anesthesia, monitor vital signs, etc. And that picture right there tells you all you need to know as to why this is just a completely bad fucking idea. Just all the way around. The existence of this game fills me with somewhat existential dread that I probably haven't felt since high school, mostly just because as I've mentioned before, I have a fear of being attacked by animals in the water, and even though this is out of the water, it's close enough. But maybe I don't have to worry about this game becoming a runaway success and seeing it on everyone's feed when you watch the trailer. And yes, there was a trailer, and get to the very end where they ask people to, they being the devs, ask people to wish list it on Steam. You can see they put quite a bit of care into spelling wish list properly, and somehow that got through their quality control. So if that's the case, maybe their game will not be a good enough, high enough quality to keep people engaged and keep this showing up in my feed all the time. One can hope. All right, folks, on that paranoid note about sharks, I'm going to leave this episode there for the week. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Quickbird Gaming. I really do appreciate that. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like on the video. Drop a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of the coverage. If there was a story you thought I covered sufficiently or something I missed, let me know. If there was a big news event this week that you think I missed, let me know that too. And please consider subscribing to the channel. You know, I checked my demographics on my last video, and about 80% of my views and watch time come from non-subscribers. So I'm hoping that some of you will see something you like. Please consider subscribing. All that kind of engagement really helps me out and keeps me motivated to make more content. So I appreciate all that. Anyway, I'm going to call it quits here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.